Hi there, my name is Natalia Motluck, and today I am going to be talking about Christine de Pizan. Totally going to butcher the names. And I'm going to give a bit of a breakdown about her life, who she was, and how she came to be the author that we know her as of the Book of the City of Ladies. Christine de Pizan was born in 1364 in Venice to a pretty wealthy and well-off family. Her father, Tommaso, served the Republic of Venice as an astrologer, a physician, and counselor. Astrologers were said to have special insight and divine knowledge into court and personal affairs and terrestrial events still to happen. And this would have been based on the study of celestial objects. The family moved from Venice to France when Christine was around the ages 4 to 5, when her father accepted a position at court as the astrologer to Charles V. Following the family's arrival at the French court, Tommaso made it a priority that Christine received an education equal to that of her two brothers, which would have been quite rare at the time, even for a lady of her standing. Charles V was known as Charles the Wise. So the sharing of ideas, it was a very intellectual court, and it was focused very much on learning and exploration. So that's the environment that Christine would have been brought up in. Charles was famous for his grand library, and he left behind a collection of 1,200 books. So one can imagine that throughout her life, Christine would have been in and out of this library, exposed to these texts, reading, learning constantly, which would lead into her later literary career. At 15 years old, she wed Etienne du Castillo, again, might have butchered that one, sorry, who was the royal secretary, which would have been a very important bureaucratic position, focusing a lot on the recording of events and saving of documents. Christine and Etienne remained married for 10 years and had 3 children together. And all evidence points to the fact that this was a love match and that she was, in fact, quite heartbroken when she lost her husband suddenly to the plague, sadly. In the same year, she also lost her father and the king, and this clearly had a very large effect on her, as these were her main influences and 3 men that she really clearly looked up to. Christine said later in her life that had she not been widowed, she probably would have never pursued her literary career, as she wouldn't really have had the push to leave her domestic duties behind. So sadly, we're kind of lucky that Etienne got the plague. Sorry, Etienne. She turned to writing conventional poems about love and loss that were sort of exploring her experience as a widow. And these picked up attention at court due to the fact, one, that female authors were quite a novelty at the time. Clearly, considering she's the first professional female writer, they were very rare. And also the fact that she already held an important position. Many important male figures at court would have known who she was through her husband, her father, and her close relationship with the royal family. As an author, Christine produced over 40 books. Her most famous is the Book of the City of Ladies, which was published in 1405 and is a revisionist history written for women by women. This book focused on alternative interpretations of women from the Old Testament to ancient Greeks. So something that I even think is important to do today in taking ancient texts that have been very influential, especially to interpretations of gender, and challenging them, questioning the different interpretations which have been taken of these women throughout time. For me, the most interesting thing about her literary career are the number of mirrors for princes which she wrote. And these were basically guidebooks for kings on how to rule justly. I just think it's quite interesting that anyone would have even funded a woman's project on informing men how to properly rule. The final text written by Christine before her death was The Tale of Joan of Arc. I think it's kind of telling that her last text was written about someone who's come to be known as a sort of feminist icon. And Christine herself has some have questioned whether she should be called the first feminist, even though that was obviously not a term that existed when either Christine or Joan were around. I think Some of the things after looking into Christine's life that I've walked away wondering about, the fact that there was so many men that were clearly willing to patronize and listen to and encourage the work of a woman. How did that contradict with their beliefs about gender and about women's inferiority? How can you appreciate the advice of a woman on ruling and then at the same time still believe that women are unreasonable and hysterical people? I also think it is kind of upsetting when I look at Christine's life and work, because I think about all of the women that were not educated to the same standard as men, all of the women that were illiterate, that did not have the power and wealth that Christine was given in her life, who maybe also had really interesting and influential ideas that could have changed the path of history that are just lost. And that's kind of what I walked away from looking at her life thinking about, is A, how impressive and influential her work was, but also how upsetting it is that more voices were not highlighted and that more people were not given the space to create in the way that she was. Thank you for listening, and I hope this has been an interesting overview of Christine's life.